Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Sarah. I'm one of the educators here at the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California, and I'm really excited that you're joining us for a program that has probably one of my favorite titles of all the programs we teach. This program is No Bones, No Problem. Now, you might be wondering, what are we talking about in a program that is titled No Bones, No Problem? And I'm going to tell you, we're going to talk about a special group of animals called invertebrates. Now, before we get into that, I want to set us up so that if you are watching and you have any questions or any observations you want to share, you can communicate it with us. Now, I'm not alone here in the studio. As always, we're working on a team, and I've got my friend Jason controlling everything you see behind me. And I'm going to have Jason put up what we call our lower third. That's going to be our text line. So if you're watching and you have any questions or you make some observations, we're going to make lots of observations today, you can go ahead and text us. So we're going to put up that text line in just a moment. Help out real quick. Excellent. So you can see we just put up this text line. So you can text us at 562-286-1838. So that's if you want to share any questions, any observations, if you want to say hello, good morning, if you're watching with your class and you want to let us know that you're tuning in today, we would love to hear from you. Now, this text line is best used if you're watching this program live, which means it's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, October 24th. You can text us. Now, you can always use our email address when it's live too, but if you're watching after the fact, so it's not 10 a.m. on October 24th, we are going to ask that you email us at live@lbaop.org. And we'll still monitor that email and answer your questions, but we're not always watching the text line. So sometimes after the fact, the email is easier. All right, we ready to get back to No Bones, No Problem? Now, we're going to talk about a group of animals called invertebrates. Now, that's a pretty big word, so I'm going to come on over to my document camera. I'm going to turn the light on. And I just want to write out that word so we can see what that word looks like. Excellent. All right, so this word is invertebrate. I always think that I can write and talk at the same time, but I want to make sure I'm spelling this word correctly. So invertebrate. So when we put this word in front of a word, it means no or not. So if we take off that in, we've got vertebrate. Now, have you heard that word before, a vertebrate or a vertebrae? You may have heard it because we humans, we have vertebrae in our body. If you take your hands and you reach behind and you feel your back right in the very middle, that's your spine. And if you kind of move your hands up and down, you might feel along your spine there's all these bumps. And that's because your spine is not one solid bone. It's not one piece. It's a bunch of bones stacked together. And each one of those bones, those are your vertebrae. So we are vertebrates. We have vertebrae. We have bones in our body. Now, when we put this in front of vertebrate, it means no bones. So the animals we're going to talk about today have no bones in their body. Now, you might be able to think of a lot of animals that have bones, right? Humans, we have bones. If you have a dog or a cat at home, if you have a lizard or a reptile at home, if you have a bird or you see a bird in your community, all those animals, they have bones. But there's actually more animals on the planet that have no bones than animals with bones. And we're going to talk about just a few of those. There's too many of them for us to talk about in just 30 minutes. But we're going to talk about some invertebrates that live in the ocean. Now, that title, No Bones, No Problem, we've titled it because even though animals without bones might face different challenges than we do with bones, right? It's easy for us to move with our skeleton. These animals, they have to find different ways of functioning, but they are very successful. And we'll talk about the ways that some of these animals are able to survive even without bones in their body. So I'm going to have Jason put us back into what we'd call Coastal Corner. That's one of our exhibits here at the aquarium. It's probably one of my favorite exhibits. And if you visit us before, you may have come up to our Coastal Corner, one of our touch pools. And that means that you can reach in and touch a lot of these animals. Now, it's one of my favorite exhibits here at the aquarium because it's modeled after tide pool habitat. And I love going to the tide pools. If you live here in Southern California, we have tide pools all along our coastline. And it's a really cool way to go out to the ocean, along the rocks, and you can see a lot of these animals in their natural habitat, which I think is really cool. Now, we're going to take a moment and make some observations of these invertebrates. Now, that's a big word. We're adding in another big word besides invertebrate, observations. Have you ever made an observation before? I bet you have, even if you didn't realize it. Now, when we talk about observations here at the aquarium, we talk about them as a tool that scientists use. And believe it or not, you watching with us today, you are a scientist. Anytime you watch one of our programs, you come to the aquarium, you read books about animals or science, you become a scientist. And what I think is great about observations is you may know nothing about the thing that you're studying or you're looking at, you can still make observations. Because when we make an observation, we're just looking at something and describing what we see. So you may know a lot about these animals here, or they may be brand new animals that you have never seen before, and you can still make observations. Because we're just going to take a moment and look, and then describe what we see or what we notice. So what do you notice about this habitat or these animals here in the corner? Now remember, if you want to share those questions or observations, you can text us at 562-286-1838. We would love to hear from you. And while formulating those observations, I'll share what I notice. So I notice a lot of animals that are shaped like stars. Did you see that? So this habitat has a lot of sea stars in it. There's a star here, and up here, and here. And this one looks a little, this one right here looks a little bit different, but there's another one here, and here, and here. And there's an arm of a sea star right here, and here, and here. All over, we've got lots and lots of sea stars. Do you notice any other animals? Well, we notice that fish. Now, that fish does live in this habitat, but that fish is the one animal in here that is not an invertebrate. Because if we were to look inside the body of that fish, we would notice they do have a skeleton. They have bones in their body. But the rest of the animals here, no bones. All right, what else do you notice? Now, I notice these kind of fluffy things right here, and this thing that's kind of waving in the water there. And there's another one here. Have you seen those animals before? Now, these ones are really big, but we do have them in our tide pools locally. They tend to be a little bit smaller. Those are sea anemones. And sea anemones are another type of invertebrate. Now, I want to stop and talk about these two, sea stars and sea anemones, because I think they're really interesting to compare and contrast these two invertebrates, because their bodies are very different. Now, sometimes it gets kind of confusing to think about animals with no bones, because you might think they're all squishy, right? If we took out all of our bones in our skeleton, or in our body, took our whole skeleton out, we'd crumple to the floor in a big blob, right? So you think with no bones, that means your body must be soft and squishy. And that is true for some invertebrates, like our anemone. Maybe we can take a closer look at a picture of a sea anemone. Excellent. Now this one here is called a fish-eating anemone. So even though it's an invertebrate with no bones, it does eat animals with bones. And not all anemones eat fish. Some will eat shrimp or other little animals that just drift on by, other what we call plankton, floating things in the water. But this animal, our anemone, is a pretty soft and squishy animal. If you've ever been to an aquarium or a tide pool and you've touched them, there's nothing hard on their body. Their body pretty much feels almost like you're touching nothing. Now, these animals, they are relatives of jellies, sea jellies or jellyfish, and their body is made up mostly of water. They've got their organs in there. They've got some really cool tentacles we'll talk about in a moment, but most of their body is made of water. Now, that's kind of interesting to think about because as humans, a lot of our body is made of water, but we do have that skeleton in our body. But our anemone is all soft and squishy. There's nothing hard in their body. Now, when we see anemones in the water, they've got this little sort of stalk to their body. You can see right here, this red part is their stalk. It's kind of where all their organs are. And then it opens up to this flower-like thing right here. Here in the middle is their mouth, right there. Now, their mouth is different than ours. They don't have teeth. Remember, there's nothing hard in their body. They don't chew their food. They just bring it into their mouth, and then they're going to pull it into their stomach, which is down here in that stalk area. And then they're going to digest and break down their food, take whatever nutrients they need from it. And then, when they release their waste, you got it. Comes right out, this part right here. So, in and out, one space. Now, that sounds kind of silly or kind of gross almost. But this animal is pretty simple. There's not a lot to it. And so, it's actually really efficient to have things go in and come out the exact same way. We see that in a lot of these invertebrates because their bodies may not be as complex as our bodies or other vertebrate animals. And so sometimes spaces are used for many things. They're multifunctional. So this hole in the middle, food goes in, and then the waste comes right back out. And then we've got these tentacles here. Has anyone ever touched an anemone before? Now they are safe to touch, but you might feel something kind of funny when you touch them. When you touch their tentacles, it might almost feel like you're touching a sticky piece of tape. And that's because this anemone has stinging tentacles, or stingers in its tentacles, so stinging tentacles. These cells in those tentacles allow them to sting. Now it's not strong enough to hurt us, but if you're a fish, like this one might be eating, or a shrimp or an animal that has really thin scales, thin skin, and you try and swim through the animal, they'll use their stingers to catch that food, to hold on to it, and then they'll curl their body in, they'll tuck all their tentacles in, and they'll bring that food into their mouth. Now, when we touch it, our skin is too thick, and like I said, that sting isn't strong enough to hurt us, but we do feel that kind of stickiness, and that's because the animal is trying to sting you. Now, if we go back to that video of coastal corner, what I think is something really interesting when we talk about anemones versus sea stars specifically is the sort of shape and size of their body. So, anemones, you can see this one here, it's stuck to the side of a rock, and you can see water is kind of rushing through its body. These animals here, they all live in a tide pool. And a tide pool is a habitat that gets hit by waves over and over and over again. So these animals not only have to find a way to hold on with all those waves crashing, but they also have to find a way to keep their body safe without being pushed around too much. So what's interesting about our anemone is they have this really long body that sticks out from the rock, but they're very flexible. You can, if you're standing or sitting, you can kind of move your body side to side. So these animals, their bodies can move in the water. Because think about it, if you stand really, really straight and you get hit by a wave, it could hurt your body if you aren't flexible. And so the anemone has that really squishy body, right, with no bones in it, and it allows it to move with the water. So if the waves are pushing it this way, it can move this way. If the waves are pushing it this way, it can move this way. Even forward or backwards, it can pretty much move in any direction. And those waves won't really hurt the body because it's nice and flexible. Now, if we switch over to talk about our sea stars, you might notice they're stuck to a rock, but they're not sticking out the rock the way that an anemone is. Instead, they're flat, right? They're flat right against the rock. Now, has anyone ever touched a sea star? So we said if you touch an anemone, it's going to be squishy. It's going to be very soft. It might be a little bit sticky. But when you touch a sea star, especially like this kind right here, actually most of the ones you see, this one right here is one exception. This right here is called our leather star, and it's a little bit squishier and softer than most sea stars. But the majority of sea stars you touch, they're going to be hard. So if you think about this animal, these sea stars, they are flat against the rock, and they have a hard body. Because if their body were sticking up straight out the way that an anemone would, and they get hit by a wave, it can cause more damage to their body. So instead, they lie flat against the rock with their hard body. Now, you can use your body to make a sea star if you're sitting or if you're standing. One arm can be one arm, two arms, your head can be another arm, and then your legs make that sea star. So you can be a sea star, and your sea star would stick onto a rock. Now maybe we can take a closer look at some sea stars. The sea stars, the main ones in that exhibit are called ochre stars, but these ones right here, these are called bat stars. And these ones definitely feel really hard. When we're up at the touch pool, up at Coastal Corner, and if anyone's ever kind of hesitant to touch these ones, I tell them to touch the rocks first, and then to touch the sea star. Because these sea stars, they just feel like a rock. They've got these hard plates. Now their plates are not bones, so they're not a vertebrate. They are an invertebrate, right? They have no bones in their body, but that doesn't mean that they have to be soft. They can have some hard things in their body. So sea stars have these hard plates that kind of overlap, and that creates the structure for their body. Now, what I think is really cool about these bat stars is look at all the colors you see. What colors do you see on the bat stars? Right here we've got a really bright orange. And then we've got some pinks and kind of purples and white with pink spots, and then sort of yellowy orange, and then even a lighter one down here. They come in all different colors. We even have a blue, kind of like the blue of my sweatshirt, but prettier. They have a blue sea star here in our Coastal Corner in our touch pool. So these sea stars come in all different colors. Now, even though they're all different colors, they are all called bat stars. And we don't really know why they're different colors. They eat the same things. They live in the same place. They just are all different colors. Now, I want you to take a couple more seconds to make some observations of these sea stars. What else do you notice about them? And I have a challenge for you. Can you find the one sea star in here that maybe has something different about it than the rest of them? Now, they all are bat stars, but there's one in here. I'd say it's hiding, but it's not really hiding. It's pretty much in plain view. That is a little bit different than the rest. Can you spot it? I'll give you a hint. Let's take a look at this one right here in the middle. How many arms do we say a sea star has, right? We were being a sea star before. Sea stars have, too far. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 arms. That one has 5 arms. Let's count this one right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Excellent. What about this one? Did you spot that one? Excellent. You spotted this sea star has 6 arms. Now, most sea stars, they're going to have 5 arms. There are a couple of sea stars that we know will have more arms. There's a sunflower star that can have up to 25 arms. And there's a sun star that has like maybe 8 or 9 arms. But every so often, we'll find bat stars, which should have 5, with 6 or even 7 arms. And then even more occasional, like more rare. So this happens every so often, but even less so. Sometimes we'll see them have 4 arms. It's just how that sea star hatched from an egg and grew. Nothing's wrong with it. It just has a couple extra arms. Excellent. All right, let's take a different look at our coastal corner. So we were looking at our deeper pool, but we have another shallow view to look at, and that will help us look at some more invertebrates. Excellent. Now, can you identify the invertebrates we already talked about? Right, we've got the anemones right here, and then this one's an anemone. This is an anemone. This one here. This one here is even an anemone. It just has all its tentacles curled into its body. And then we've got the sea stars, right? We've got some ochre stars here and here. And over here, this is a different kind of sea star. This one's called a giant spine star or a knobby star, or I learned it as a jeweled star too. But those are all names to identify that sea star. But did you see this thing right here? Did you notice that? That is one of my favorite animals, my favorite invertebrates, especially in a tide pool. That is called a sea cucumber. Do we have a picture of a sea cucumber? I'm going to give Jason a moment to find that picture. I said I'd make it easy for him today, and now I've thrown him for a loop. But sea cucumber is a really cool invertebrate. And they're a lot smaller than some of those sea stars, and they're a lot squishier. Excellent. So this is one type of sea cucumber. There are lots of different types of sea cucumbers, just like there's different types of anemones and different types of sea stars. Now, let's make some observations. What do you notice about our sea cucumber? What color do you see? Right, it's kind of reddish, kind of orangish a little, and then it's got these white spines on it. Now, I want you to make a prediction. If you've never touched a sea cucumber before, if you were to touch this animal, how do you think it would feel? What do you predict? Do you think it'd be soft and squishy? Do you think it'd be hard? Do you think it'd be spiky or bumpy? What are your predictions? Now, a lot of times we hear, because I ask this question a lot, we hear that probably it's spiky, right? It looks like it has spikes that cover its body. And even though there's different types of sea cucumbers, most of them have what look like these spikes. But I'm here to tell you that the sea cucumber is probably one of the biggest tricksters in the ocean. Because even though it looks spiky, if you were to touch a sea cucumber, just like the anemone, they are all squish. Nothing hard on their body. Not even one of those spines are hard. They're actually really soft and kind of flimsy or flexible. So the sea cucumber has all these spines on its body that it can look really spiky and kind of dangerous or kind of scary. If you're looking for a snack and you see something covered in spines, do you want to take a bite of it? Probably not. You would get a mouthful of spines. It'd probably hurt your tongue and the roof of your mouth. It might even hurt your lips. And so most animals, if they see something spiky in the ocean, they're not going to want to eat it. So the sea cucumber makes animals think that it's really hard and spiky. But if any animal is brave enough to go look past the spines and they take a bite of the cucumber, they're going to find it's all squish. Now, you might be wondering where the head of the sea cucumber is and where the other end is. And that's a great question. Sometimes it's hard to tell. There is one end that is the mouth. They don't really have a head. They don't have eyes like we do. They don't have a brain like we do. But they do have a mouth on one end. And then the other end is where they release their waste. Now, looking at this sea cucumber, I think this end here is actually the mouth, and then this is the other end. And I say that this is the mouth because if you look down here, it almost looks like extra little spines. They have these kind of flowery feeding sort of appendages or tubes that they kind of open up, and it really looks like a flower, and they kind of wave them around, and they'll catch whatever they can find. Sometimes they'll dig through the sand. They'll sort of move those feathery parts through the sand to find whatever pieces of food another animal maybe ate and dropped little pieces, or they'll just kind of catch whatever floats by, and then they'll bring it in. And then it goes through their body, and then it comes out the other end. Now, sea cucumbers, like I said, they're a pretty big trickster, but if an animal did get brave and tried to maybe attack or eat the sea cucumber, despite those spines, they do have another way to protect themselves. This is where we go back to that title, no bones, no problem. So you might think if you have bones, it's less likely someone's going to eat you because maybe you can move faster or your body's a lot harder, and so it's harder for someone to eat you. But animals with no bones, even though it might seem easy to eat a sea cucumber, first you have to figure out if those spines are real. And the second thing a sea cucumber can do is something called evisceration. Now that's a big fancy word. What it really means is the sea cucumber, if they're threatened, so if they get scared, they take their guts, their stomach and all their insides, and they spit it out their body. You heard that right. They take all their stomach and insides and they spit it out their mouth. And this does one of two things possibly. They hope that by spitting out their stomach, either it scares whatever's trying to eat them and then the animal goes away, or it distracts them. And the animal that's trying to eat the cucumber will eat their intestines and their stomach instead, and the cucumber can kind of slink away and get away. And then they stay safe, and they can actually regrow their stomach. Isn't that wild? They can regrow their stomach. Now, sea cucumbers are actually relatives of sea stars. Now, that might sound kind of weird because they don't really look like each other, but one of the characteristics that connects sea cucumbers and sea stars, well, there's actually two things. One is spiny skin. Now, we did establish that the sea cucumber is all squish, so there's no actual spines, but it does look like it has spiny skin, right? And the sea stars, we saw those kind of bumps and the hard parts of their body, spiny skin. Another characteristic that links up sea stars and sea cucumbers are the fact that they can regrow some part of their body. Now, there's another big word. Regeneration just means regrow part of their body. So sea stars, if they lose an arm, they can regrow that new arm. It takes a long time. It takes about a year or longer, but they can regrow a brand new arm. The sea cucumber, they don't really have arms to regrow, but they can regrow their stomach. So if they shoot their stomach out to protect themselves and then get away from the predator, they can then regrow that stomach. And that helps them keep living and doing all their sea cucumber things. Excellent. Now there's one other relative of a sea cucumber and a sea star we can talk about. If we go back to that second view of coastal corner. Excellent. Now this one's kind of hiding towards the bottom, but see if you can spot anything purple in this habitat. We've got lots of orange. We've got lots of pink, some kind of reddish color. But if you look at this far corner all the way over here, there's something purple right there. There's a couple more down here, but our sort of bar is covering it. But take a look at this animal right here. Have you ever seen this animal before? Let's see if we can take a closer look at what this animal looks like. Ooh, excellent. So we've got this video here so we can see our sea star, but take a look at these purple things. Those are sea urchins. Now, sea urchins, they are relatives of our sea stars. Do they look the same? Nope. Look very different. And they don't look like the sea cucumber either. But these animals all share some things in common, like that spiny skin, right? It's a really good view here. You can see just how spiny the sea star skin can be. But that sea urchin, even spinier. And there's a lot of sea urchins here. There's one here, 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 here. I think underneath this rock right here, there's one. There's one up here. There's lots of sea urchins, and they have those spines covering their body. Now, sea urchins are another one of those interesting animals where they are an invertebrate. They don't have bones in their body. But just because they don't have bones, it doesn't mean that their body is soft and squishy. Their body is actually very, very hard. So they've got these spines, And then those spines actually cover something that we call a test. Now, it's kind of like a test you take in school. It's spelled the same way. But this test is really just their shell. So I'm going to go over to my document camera, and I have what their test looks like. So this is from a sea urchin. Now, it looks very different than the sea urchins we were just looking at. I'll adjust my lighting a little bit. There we go. So this is basically the shell that protects the organs of our sea urchin. So it's a really hard shell. It is kind of fragile. If I drop it, it definitely will break into a bunch of pieces. But it's a hard shell. And then those spines attach to where you see all these white bumps. We can zoom in. Give it a minute to focus. There we go. So all of these spots are where those spines would attach on their body. Now, the spine connects in a really interesting way that allows the spine to move in all kinds of directions. So it's not very rigid. It has some flexibility in how it can move. But those spines on the hard shell do make this animal pretty tough. But still an invertebrate, because even though it's got a hard shell, it's not the same as bones. Now, on the bottom, if I zoom out a little, this is where the mouth is of the sea urchin. So this is the top part where all the spines come out. But the bottom is where their mouth is. And they have 5 teeth. So they have more hard in their mouth. Whereas things like the cucumber or the anemone are all squish and their mouth has nothing hard in it. So they just kind of digest their food. They pull it into their mouth and then digest it. Sea urchins have teeth. They have 5 teeth and they munch on things. Their favorite thing to eat is kelp or seaweed. So we find them in our kelp forest because that's where their favorite snacks are. All right, let's go back and take a look at our sea urchins again. Excellent. Oh, perfect. So here is a purple urchin, and I love this picture because look how bright that color is. And it's sitting on its favorite snack. Now, a lot of times when you come visit us or if you go to a tide pool or even if you're snorkeling or scuba diving in a kelp forest, you'll see urchins, and sometimes they have kelp on top of their head. Now, they're wearing it kind of like a hat, but basically it's like they like to hold on to snacks, so if they need it later, they already have it ready to go, right? I think that's really smart. When you leave the house, whether for school or if you're going out for the day, sometimes we bring snacks. I know I bring snacks with me almost everywhere because I'm always hungry. And our urchins, same thing. They like to carry snacks with them. Now, what's cool is this is a purple urchin, but we actually have urchins that come in all different colors. There are red urchins. Those tend to be larger. There are green urchins. There are pink urchins. There are black urchins. There are white urchins, all different colors. But they all have these spines that act as protection that covers their body, which is really cool because they don't have those bones. They don't move the same way we do. Bones allow animals to move a lot faster. And so these animals who maybe don't have bones, who can't move very fast, they have to find other ways to stay safe, like having spines or like the anemone being able to sting other animals. Excellent, everyone. Well, we are about out of time, so I'm going to have Jason put us back into Coastal Corner to either of our tools. Excellent. So we got to talk about a lot of invertebrates, but really just a small group of invertebrates. We focus mainly on ones in the tide pool, but there are tons of invertebrates in the ocean and on land too. So just a quick review, we talked about the anemone, all squish. We talked about the sea star, no squish. We talked about the sea cucumber, another all squishy invertebrate. And then we talked about the urchin, which is another very not squishy invertebrate. So invertebrates, even though they have no bones, they can come in lots of different shapes and sizes and even textures to their body. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about some invertebrates in the ocean today. If you have any last-minute questions or observations, go ahead and text us or email us. Those numbers are up right now. And we'll see you again next week for more programming. Bye, everyone.